Welcome back, Wolfpack. Verlis here, and I'm talking about Aegislash today because it's up for suspect test on Smogon. And before you guys leave a hateful comment, or before you guys come here to think I'm bashing and hating against Smogon blindly, I want you guys to know this is probably the most in-depth Pokemon I've looked on. This Pokemon probably reflects me as a battler more than any other Pokemon. It's probably my favorite Pokemon for the mechanical skill involved in playing it. And I'm going to make these arguments, you know, in the rest of this video. So sit back. This one's going hopefully not 15-20 minutes, but it's most likely going to do that. So sit back and get ready for some Pokemon knowledge. And if you don't want to sit back, leave your thumbs down, leave your hateful comment, get the fuck out right now, because there's no reasoning with you and there's not going to be any kind of really good debate going on. But here's what I have to say about Aegislash. So Aegislash, very strong Pokemon. Very amazing Pokemon for what it can represent to a strong battler. And I think that's what the biggest problem about Aegislash is that for an OU Pokemon, I don't really like using the tiering, but for an OU Pokemon, for a just not borderline, but just for a strong Pokemon overall that's played a lot, it has a lot more mechanical skill than other OU Pokemon. That with Garchomp, with a lot of other OU Pokemon, you kind of show up, you have 4 moves that are essentially cookie cutter, and you just run repeat strategies and things over and over. You already have a lot of matchups understood, and you just kind of react accordingly. Whether or not you switch out, or whether or not you just have the advantage and score KOs, or get further advantage on your Pokemon, a lot of very used Pokemon are easy. Because Talonflame, you show up and you Brave Bird what you can, and then you Flare Blitz what you can't. Kind of idea. You can use Protect in double battles, and like there's a lot of things that, you know, with these easy Pokemon, you open Wash Rotom, you throw down a Burn if it's physical, and then you Volt Switch out to try to regain some to regain some ground. There's a lot of simplicity to overuse Pokemon, but at the same time, these are very strong Pokemon, and they don't take a lot of skill to manage getting ahead in. Aegislash is the other way around, because it takes an incredible amount of skill personally to play. Now, here's where the arguments start coming in, that a lot of people will disagree that Aegislash takes a lot of skill because of its high base stat total and its versatility in movesets and its ability to trade 50-50. Now, first off, I'm going to start with the 50-50 trade one, which would be this finger technically. With the 50-50 trades, that's what Pokemon battling is all about. You have to gain an advantage at some point in the game. You have to go 2 for 1 to win the battle. If you don't, you tie, which almost never happens, and then you lose. So at the same time, having a Pokemon like Aegislash that is a better 50-50 is just a good idea. It's not an overall busted Pokemon. And for the most part, it does have its own vulnerabilities. That there are ways to run Aegislash. You know, you either have a special set that has a high one-hit KO potential on a lot of Pokemon, but also doesn't have a high multi-kill potential. So with the special Aegislash, you can kind of use it in to soak damage, dish out a huge amount of damage, become a 2-3 hit KO, but also 2-3 hit KO, well actually 1-2 hit KO your opponent back, and then you trade 1 for 1, you're a bit softened up, and then you are slow, so you lose a lot of your edges. You might be able to, you know, get a KO and then plus some damage, but it's really hard for a special Aegislash to actually go into heavy 2-3-4-0 sweeping. But at the same time, now we have physical Aegislash with Swords Dance, that if it sets up those Swords Dances, it becomes an incredibly likely Pokemon to 6-0 your opponent because it becomes out of control. But now we're going to talk about the buildup of that Pokemon, because at any given time during that setup, Aegislash is incredibly vulnerable. It's entirely stoppable, and if you don't stop that Pokemon from going 6-0 or +6, you know, +6 with the 3 Swords Dance, that's your fault. You shouldn't cause the ban on the Pokemon because that makes you uncomfortable. Because Aegislash is a thinking Pokemon. That I don't think that it takes a lot to bring an Aegislash counter. That a lot of the Pokemon that I've used and a lot of Pokemon that are in the metagame naturally have a way of handling Aegislash, and you just have to out-mind game it. Mega Mawile is a good Pokemon that can go either way with Aegislash. We also have Talonflame. Talonflame has a couple of options against Aegislash with that Flare Blitz if it can predict it really well while it's setting up, you know. Aegislash either has to King Shield or Swords Dance. If you have Talonflame sitting there intimidating it from Swords Dancing, so it's trying to King Shield and you can read those predictions, you're going to get free damage on a Talonflame, or you're going to be able to get a huge Flare Blitz onto an Aegislash, and then, you know, the mechanics just keep snowballing out of control from there. That there are ways to read your opponent, and if you can keep doing it like that. Garchomp, Choice Band Garchomp, 1-hit KOs Aegislash while outspeeding it. Done, right there. But at the same time, you have to understand that there are a lot more matchups that mean, like, I think that Aegislash pretty much boils down to the better player wins. That if you misplay with Aegislash, you're going to get punished and you're almost giving your opponent a free Pokemon. You're giving them a free KO. But if you play it properly and you get inside your opponent's head and you outthink them, you outpredict them, you're going to be able to do much better than them and then get this out-of-control snowbally Pokemon at a +6 that can essentially Shadow Sneak one-hit KO almost everything in the game and then win you a 6-0. So there's a fine line on Aegislash, but I think that's a high-risk, high-reward form of play that isn't necessarily busted. Because at any point, you could give your opponent that advantage, and now you're 5, they have 6, a slightly weakened 6 potentially. But at the same time, if you go 1 from there, you lost because you didn't play your Aegislash properly. That shouldn't cause for a ban, I feel. And a lot of people, they'll make the argument that predictions are all about luck. No, predictions are about skill. If you believe that predictions are luck, then I feel that that is a lack of skill on your part, personally. Not calling out anyone's skill, but I'm saying that if you don't want to play a thinking game in Pokemon, then don't play Pokemon. Pokemon is mostly a prediction game, that if you read your opponent better, you're going to win more of your battles, and Aegislash is just the embodiment of that. That's not about a good switch. It's not about a couple of good predictions. It's the master of predictions and switches, that you can either stop out your opponent, you can entirely wall them, you can entirely set up against them, and then you can sweep them, or at the same time, your opponent can just get one good read, take one chance that pays off, and your Aegislash means nothing. So I don't think that's luck. It's not luck for me to think, okay, he's probably going to throw out a physical attack that's making contact, so I'm going to King's Shield. But if he's anticipating my King's Shield, he might try to set up against me, which means I'm setting up against him. This is thinking what your opponent is thinking. I don't think that's luck. I think that's a high-level skill part of the game that if you don't want to think, and you're an advocate for just these no-brainer OUs centralizing the meta, then good, ban Aegislash. But if you're going to... if you do want to think, then Aegislash is completely healthy for the game because it doesn't really cause too much centralization. Sure, it does create a lot of Pokemon from being not very used, but at the same time, every other Pokemon in OU creates other Pokemon for not being used. That's why they're in OU. They're in the tops. Aegislash does that no more than Talonflame, Chansey, Wash Rotom, anything, honestly. So I don't know why that's even an argument, that it's keeping other Pokemon from shining. But at the same time, if you know how to get around Aegislash, if you bring an Aegislash counter, now you can let that Pokemon shine, because one of its biggest problems is gone. So if you know how to play the game around, and you think outside the OU meta, and you start pulling in other resources, Aegislash has its own ways of, not being the best. So let's go and talk about counters to Aegislash. Aegislash loses to Klefki with Foul Play. Aegislash just straight up loses to Foul Play. Klefki with Foul Play can endure a +6 Shadow Sneak, and then hit Foul Play, one-hit KO. Even in Shield form, if Aegislash is going for a +6 Sacred Sword, Klefki outspeeds and then goes for a Foul Play and then Shield form KO. At the same time, you also have the ability to get burned. I would be a bit more willing to ban Aegislash if King's Shield was a full protect, but it's not. Their Aegislash scores a KO, they either have to go into King's Shield or they lose their Pokemon, most likely depending on how the situation's played. So what they do then is they go into King's Shield. That makes them retaliatable. You throw down the Will-O-Wisp onto them, and now their Aegislash loses a lot of its strength. A +6 Aegislash that's Will-O-Wisp only has a 150% more attack. So while that still is a lot, it takes away a lot of its one-hit KO priority potential, and then it leaves it open to just get outsped and out-KO'd from there while Burn is ticking it down. So there are a lot of vulnerabilities to Aegislash that I feel, if you can capitalize on those vulnerabilities, you stop them out, you make it a 1-for-1 trade, that's done. That's not a busted Pokemon. So that's how I feel about it. Just going on things like that, Choice Band Garchomp, again, that's a Pokemon that can stop it out. Mega Mawile is a Pokemon that can trade with Aegislash so incredibly well. Aegislash is a Pokemon that can trade with Aegislash. That in those matchups, the better player wins. It's whoever decides to take the risks. It's whoever decides to counter risk. It's whoever decides to really try to be the better battler and understand their opponent better than the opponent understands them. That is what this game is about. That is how you win games, and that is why Aegislash is my favorite Pokemon in the game, and I don't want to see it banned because people don't want to have to deal with the higher mechanical thought of the game. That's what you're doing when you're advocating a ban on Aegislash. You're trying to remove thought from the game because thought is what's keeping Aegislash in such a scary state. Because, sure, it does have a high trade potential, and a lot of people are saying it's unpredictable. But the unpredictable Aegislashes are the worst Aegislashes. Special Aegislash, in my opinion, isn't better than a physical Aegislash because of its potential to not, or because physical Aegislash is a 6-0 Pokemon. Special Aegislash is barely a 2-0 Pokemon. It's going to get a good read, it's going to soak some damage, it's going to score KO, and it's going to chip some damage against your opponent's next Pokemon while maybe lowering their attack. But that's it. That's the most you're going to get out of Special Aegislash. Sub-Toxic Aegislash is another one that people are arguing. They're saying, well, Aegislash can run 3 ways, so you should ban it. Really? 3 ways to run Pokemon should be banned? When 2 of those sets are non-optimal to Uber conditions? The definition of an Uber is a Pokemon that can effortlessly sweep a majority of the metagame. Only physical Aegislash can do that, and it doesn't do that effortlessly because it has to be played masterfully, and if you get outpredicted, or if you just get straight up countered because physical Aegislash has a lot of counters, you lose out on what makes it an Uber. I've kind of disproven luck already, because even though a lot of people that believe that predictions are all about luck, and while that does go with the autonomy that, luck removes autonomy from the game, predictions being luck means that it's a non-autonomous action, which means that it is a bannable thing. Same with Swagger. I understand that. But at the same time, I'm not going to say that because I don't think that predictions should be a luck-based bannable thing. Then we should just ban the entire game and try to just play for fun like when we were kids or something then. Also, I feel a problem with Aegislash is that with Swag Play being banned, Aegislash was scared when Swagger was running around. You Swagger and Aegislash, and they have to either KO you or KO themselves, and that's a stop. I don't care if that makes Swagger cheap, but it makes Aegislash less viable. I'm not going to go into a Swagger discussion here, but I'm saying without Swagger, now Aegislash it's out. It's more of a problem. I'm going to say that. So by implementing these bans, you're creating more and more problem Pokemon, like Aegislash. Now it's a bit more out of control. Let's see. I'm going to go and look at some other things I had lined up. Yeah, I don't feel that's over-centralizing because, a lot of other Pokemon over-centralize. A lot of Pokemon that can handle Aegislash are naturally in OU. Wash Rotom has a good handle on Aegislash. Garchomp has a good handle on Aegislash. Bisharp is incredible against an Aegislash. Like, a lot of the Pokemon that are in OU don't create a centralization problem because all these OU Pokemon are interacting just fine with Aegislash because Aegislash can sweep them, but they can sweep Aegislash back during setup. I think one of the biggest things that I've yet to talk about... God, how long is this video gone? 1 second. Ooh, that's looking like we're running on some hard time. Alright, Aegislash has a base stat total of 720. A lot of people say this. I will disagree because of the vulnerabilities. That, if you don't score that KO, now you're a Pokemon with 50 base defense and 60 hit points. You're gone. At the same time, you're not always going to be in shield form. You have to take those risks if you want to turn it into a sweep. You have to have your opponent think that you're going to King Shield, and really you just flat out attack them and you score the KO. That's really what this game boils down to. And if you can't do that, then yeah. Also, with the base stat total of 150, it doesn't mean that Aegislash has both 150 attack and 150 special attack. It theoretically has that, but once it makes the first move, you already know that the other offense isn't going to be at 430, and now you know how to properly respond. So a Pokemon surprising you shouldn't cause a ban, which is, I think, one of the problems with Mega Lucario. That people get surprised by it, and then it provokes a ban because people don't want to have to worry about, oh no, this Pokemon can be run more than one way. It's a non-cookie cutter Pokemon, what do I do? Yeah, it's kind of like one of those problems where I feel that's more of a casual issue, that you're trying to play comfortably. You don't want to be annoyed, you don't want to be frustrated, you don't want to have to think too much, so you're removing a lot of the unpredictable parts of the game, when really Pokemon's all about being unpredictable, and it's all about nailing those predictions. So, that's what I've got. Like, its versatility isn't even that strong. I'm trying to figure out what other arguments. I think I've kind of actually nailed most of the arguments, 50-50 Pokemon aren't the best. If you use Aegislash as a 50-50 Pokemon, I feel like you're wasting a lot of potential. And on top of that, there's just a lot of ways that the Pokemon can break down. That if you have a Mawile versus an Aegislash, the better Mawile player could win over the better Aegislash. That Aegislash, while having excellent typing, a lot of people are saying Aegislash's typing is too good. Its weaknesses are in the meta. Fire and Earthquake are huge weaknesses in the meta, and they can really harm an Aegislash, as well as getting burned. Even Paralysis or Sleep really ruins an Aegislash. You can confuse that bad boy and he'll knock himself out. It's all about prediction, not about the Pokemon not being autonomous or too easy. So it's not that it has great base stats, it's that people use those base stats well. I think the best thing I can say is Lee Sin, the Blind Monk from League of Legends. This Pokemon has this champion has what I feel is one of the largest skill disparities in the game. An excellent, masterful, perfect mechanical, on point, frame perfect Lee Sin is going to be miles better than just a really good Lee Sin. Really good Lee Sin could be all the way down here off camera compared to an incredible Lee Sin. And that's the same way with Aegislash. That an excellent Aegislash is super different. Like it's so far ahead of even an extraordinary Aegislash, or whatever your definition is. Like, you know, even though it's such a small difference between skill like good and great, the great one outshines exponentially. And I feel like that's the way with Lee Sin. That on high level play, Lee Sin is the most terrifying, well, has been one of the most terrifying mechanical champions in the game, but on mid and low level play, he's almost absolutely useless. So I think that Aegislash is the same, that if you are on point with your Aegislash mechanics, that this is why I love Aegislash. It creates a new dynamic in the game. That when you're dealing with OU, it's all that cookie cutter BS that, you know, it's centralizing, it's whatever. Aegislash breaks that because you actually have to think. You have to think around a Pokemon that's really strong for once, and only you can lose to an Aegislash. It's not that Aegislash is so bustedly strong it needs to be banned. Only you can fault for an Aegislash. Now, sure, you can not bring the proper counter or not have any way of stopping Aegislash and it runs over you. That's true of any Pokemon. If you don't bring priority, a Shell Smasher can ruin your day. Focus that Shell Smash and you don't have any priority on your team. That's your fault for not bringing priority. That's not the Shell Smasher's fault for being too good. Yeah, I think that's about it. So I feel like I've covered what I want to cover, you know. It's just example that when I feel that the suspect testing is a flawed mentality, honestly. That when you're going to suspect, you're proving this Pokemon is broken instead of proving why it isn't broken. And that's where the problems come in, is because people will create absurd situations. It's like, oh, well, your Aegislash can't be, like, you say this is an Aegislash counter. Well, what if I'm a sub-toxic or a special Aegislash? Oh, it's not a counter, ban it, because it has no counters. That's looking for bannable reasons instead of looking why it's a fair Pokemon. And sure, if you want it banned, that's great. But if you're wanting a fair metagame, if you're wanting a balanced metagame, then you shouldn't be looking to lock away Pokemon, throw away a key. You should be looking for what makes those Pokemon problems, what those problems are in similar Pokemon, and then where the overall problem lies, instead of going, yeah, we're going to remove that, we're going to look to remove that, we're looking to remove that. Because it creates a situation where people are looking for bans instead of looking to change the idea of the metagame. And that's where I think is showing in Aegislash, that, you know, a lot of the threats have been being banned. You know, now that Swagger's gone, Aegislash is more of a problem. That with Mega Lucario and Mega Kangaskhan, there's other problems being out there. And that, you know, the more you take away, the more problem, like, you can't take away to fix problems, to balance a game. You have to understand those problems, and you have to get people to learn to adapt by identifying them instead of removing the problems before they're properly understood. Aegislash, once you properly understand Aegislash, it's easy to see why it isn't a problem. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you all have a nice day. And I think I'm good.